Hey, everybody. Are you ready for this? You are live on Shally's Alley, May 29th, Friday, May 29th, sometime around midday, sometime around midday in the Eastern Hemisphere of the United States. Um, as you can see below here, my guest today is Blair Fambro. And man, I have been waiting for this um, for quite some time now. We've bumped into each other a couple times at conferences and talked about doing this, and we finally were able to get it in place here. So super excited about it. Just to kind of frame this up, we are going to cover what layoffs do to institutional knowledge, what AI first looks like in TA, the sourcing moves that still work, and also some hard stuff around having to roll back DEI because of the political climate and things like that. So, who is Blair Fambro? Well, our illustrious guest has 15 plus years in TI and DEI. Always been a sourcer that calls himself a programmer, kind of like me. We have that in common. Detroit-based, right? Started out in the automobile industry, then big tech, Twitter, and now working in the fast-moving consumer goods industry at the most delicious company in the world, Hershey. His sourcing superpower is unconventional Boolean and Twitter X for those. I still call it Twitter. I can't. X is like so weird. But anyway, advanced search. He's not an ATS dependent recruiter. He is a hunter. And right now at Hershey, he manages pipeline strategy and inclusion. I think pretty much nailed that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
Excellent. Before that, you've been at Johnson Controls. You probably don't know the name, but you probably use their products. Pretty much every battery that I can think of probably comes from there, not to mention a bunch of space technology. And of course, he used to work at Twitter when it was Twitter, General Motors. Interesting side note, he hired people that built the EV battery programs for like the Hummer and the Silverado EV and stuff like that. And before that, he was at HP. So without further ado, say hi.
All right. Hello, everyone. And Shally, it's always a pleasure to be on the platform. I was very excited about this. You and a couple other individuals or people I've always looked up to from a sourcing perspective. So it's always a pleasure when we get the opportunity.
Aw, thanks, man. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we love you too. I'm excited that you're here. I mean, like I said, we've been, playing tag on this for a while. So I wanted to kind of warm things up. And I know you've probably seen the show. I tend to dive in to get pretty specific and pretty tactical, but to sort of break the ice and warm things up. Could you give me like a 1-sentence description of your job right now? And more importantly, what is the problem you're solving?
Yeah. So as of right now, I would say as a 1 sentence, what I'm currently focused on is building pipelines for future and also current opportunities. That's pretty much it in a nutshell, but primarily from an inclusion perspective, I also continue to support community for people with disabilities and also veterans. That's going to always be key for all organizations and currently what I'm doing now. The problem I'm trying to solve is how to just better engage with talent, whether that's using CRM or whether that's being out and doing the traditional way of engaging with talent. Gotcha. So I would say that's the problem solver now.
That's the big problem. Yeah. Well, that's a pretty big role. That's important. I always say, sourcers build pipelines and recruiters fill them. So building the pipeline is like, that's how you get the candidates, but it's definitely a collaborative effort. Cool. Well, you have like several of us in the industry have lived through some pretty intense layoffs as both a practitioner and someone who builds pipelines and someone who builds pipelines for DEI. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is what does a layoff actually do to a sourcing team's institutional knowledge? How do you deal with that? How do you rebuild it? So, it seems to be one of the things that frequently gets dismantled first. Can you recover from it? How do you keep the institutional knowledge?
Yeah. Can you elaborate on that? You cut it in on for a little bit. You asked
through layoffs. Yeah, sorry about that. Having lived through layoffs and having had to build pipeline before and after and through, what is the institutional knowledge that you lose when you cut the sourcing team, and how do you rebuild it, or can you?
You can always rebuild, but it's always a challenge. The reason why I say it's a challenge because you're losing good people. Sometimes when you lose good people, especially from a sourcing perspective, it seems that sources and recruiters are always first to go.
Yeah.
Then when the company wants to resurface and start hiring people again, then you don't have the good sources and recruiters to do that. So you're
starting, and now you have to go back and remap the talent pools and everything else. So what's some institutional knowledge that you cannot recover once a source or a recruiter is gone?
You can't. Sometimes it's a trust factor in regards to that, because I know a lot of people, a lot of organizations, when they'll cut talent to save money. They already know who they want to bring back.
Yeah.
You can't bring that back. You're losing trust, and then you're losing people with certain skill sets that you may not be able to find. Sometimes with a sourcer, especially with a certain amount of years of experience, individuals who work with large organizations, it's hard to find that caliber of talent. So you're either going to go back and find someone who's had lesser experience but cannot bring the dynamic that you need, or you're going to be an organization that goes out and outsource from a company that's going to take a while to learn your culture, learn how you operate from a sourcing perspective, which is going to cost you essentially more money to execute as well. So I think that is a huge problem that we always see from a sourcing perspective when you get rid of your sourcing team. And companies know that, especially when you're trying to recruit someone. Let's say, for example, a company lets go of their sourcing team, and then they hire a few contractors to fill that.
Right.
It's challenging to even answer those questions, because when you're sourcing someone and you come across a good experienced candidate, they want to know about the culture. They want to know about layoffs, their future trajectory. Someone who's coming in as a contractor for a short term may not be able to answer that question. So you're losing that experience from that engagement standpoint as well. Yep. So that sourcing and recruiting.
Hold on, let me get back to it. Right. Yeah. Let me put you on hold while I ask somebody what the culture
is. You're losing that organic feel when you lose that caliber of talent.
So what if you had to bet? I'm not saying you're a gambling man or anything, but if you had to bet, what breaks first after the layoff? The pipeline, the process, or trust?
I would say the pipeline first. Pipeline first, because essentially that's the machine that's driving everything. You may have a CRM saved, but you lose that communication, that engagement. Sources have very unique skill sets where they do things from a program standpoint. I think the best sourcers think as a programmer. So the way you operate from a technical perspective, those are skill sets that other recruiters may not have, because they're doing full desk and they're more on the closing side. When you have a sourcer who's leveraging the CRM, who can master that area, the first day you lose that pipeline, and then all of a sudden, next thing it is that trust factor. And the reason that trust factor is there, because a lot of with layoffs, when everyone lays off now, it's public knowledge. As soon as it goes out, you want to know why they're laying off.
Right.
And some people, even if they're not in the recruiting aspect, they see this information about a company laying off, red flags goes up. You may not have many applicants.
I wonder what else is going on, right?
Yeah. Right. And when you do come across any talent that may be interested, the question during that sourcing and recruiting introduction call is going to be about layoffs, and that's where the trust is. Even if a person has never worked there but had some interest, they may not trust working there because of the layoffs, or even how you executed the layoffs. So I will say that the pipeline goes away in dimensions first,
and then the erosion of trust, and then maybe the process is the last one. So as a sourcer who thinks like a programmer, and I completely relate, but I'm curious, how has all the technology improvement, development, hype, whatever, everything with whatever you want to call it, AI, automation, all this stuff that, is happening right now to change our industry. As a sourcer who thinks like a programmer, how has this changed what you actually do day to day? The real workflow, like how does it actually change the workflow?
Well, there's two answers to that for me. And I'm going to think from my perspective, it just amplifies what I do. Because I already have the base knowledge of what I do and how I've been executing. So
you're doing it bigger, faster,
yeah,
better, more. Okay.
Yeah. So but for me, that's how I see it. But for people who are still 2 to 5 years in learning sourcing, it takes away a lot of the basics. They're not refining what they do. They're not learning from a technical perspective. They're leveraging AI to do all the work for them. It's great that AI can create the Boolean strings, the site commands, and where you need to go. But there's a lot of things that requires out of the box thinking, even when you're prompting. The new generation of sourcers, they don't call it sourcing, they call it prompting because they use the AI so much to build what they're doing. But there's still a depth of knowledge that they may not know or think about because they're just leveraging AI and they're not diving deep in regards to how to find these, how to use these Chrome extensions, how to do certain things to enhance and amplify that. So I've been trying to teach individuals who's sourcing, who's learning, who may not be a Boolean savant, about how to leverage AI, but also how to learn yourself because you may not always leverage this tool. As well. You don't know what capabilities are. And as AI continue to advance, some of these search engines, they're going to charge this huge price to even use AI, unless you're using something that's already enterprise.
Yeah, right. There's some models out that Perplexity is charging for API access and stuff. And I pay for it a little bit. It's, it costs me pennies a day, but that's going to keep going up, and hopefully as it gets better too, right? But so what's something really important or primary that AI consistently gets wrong as you've seen this evolve?
AI, I think AI can be manipulated. And not just even from a sourcing perspective.
Yeah, no, definitely.
even when you're interviewing, people are using AI. There are certain tools that you can use. Are you really interviewing? Or some people are using recorders in the back I see people using different screens and AI is listening to the conversation. There's a lot of things that people are manipulating. So it gets a lot of things wrong. AI still has a lot of biases in regards to this the answers that you're asking, because AI is still, people, all we hear about is AI, but AI is still very, very new. Companies are still trying to learn how to integrate the platform. It's very helpful thus far. A lot of people still think that this may take over jobs. It's not going to take over any jobs. It's going to amplify what you do.
It's already, that's been rolled back. I've seen, Sam Altman, for example, pedaled back that whole statement. And there's an article, I don't know if it was Fortune or Forbes, where they were talking about, the big CEOs of these AI companies are like, well, we actually don't really know when the jobs are getting, they're pedaling it back. But I could have called that 2 years ago. What bothers me though, have you found that it irritates me in a personal level in a lot of ways, but I want to hear kind of your perspective on it. Have you found that when AI has bias, it's like really confident about it and it's very convincing and people just kind of accept it and they don't realize that it's like really subtle, convincing bias that people are just like, oh, okay. They use it like it's a fact. And then they tell someone else something that they got from the AI and the other person's like, wait, what? No, that is completely wrong. And then they show proof and the person goes, that can't be true. AI told me, and it's like, so AI can get something really, really wrong and be really confident that it's right. Almost bullish about it.
Yeah.
You notice that?
Yeah, and I think certain platforms have that the worst. I would hate to call out a certain platform, but
let's not. But yeah, I'm shaking my head.
But there are several. You can just manipulate it, and you can call AI out, and then the system would actually apologize for giving you incorrect information. So yeah, I notice people are using that a lot where it comes to if AI they're leveraging it as all things be all. Like it can't make a mistake. AI is smart, but it's an algorithm that can be manipulated, just like all
definitely things. Yeah. And when the bias is so confident, it's like, and it's coming from a machine and we tend to trust machine. Like, I mean, think about it. When was the last time you went to your phone and opened up the calculator app and did a multiplication and then like questioned it? Like, is that correct? Yeah. You take it as fact. So when a computer tells you something, you sort of assume that it's true, even though the calculator doesn't have any AI, but the agent might be fabricating something. And the thing is it doesn't know that it's fabricating it sometimes. So I find that kind of disturbing. I feel like that's where the judgment has to constantly jump in and like override it. But can we talk about Twitter?
Yeah, we can talk about it. Yeah.
Can we talk about, okay, yeah. So you were, when you were at Twitter, now X, and you were working on like literally machine learning and NLP engineers. This is before ChatGPT. I mean, I don't know, maybe ChatGPT existed, but like it wasn't a household word, right? It was like pre the boom or whatever. You must have been involved or heard of or got, or, had early access to things that later on became AI. What signal do hiring managers think matters that actually doesn't?
Oh no,
from that experience.
In regards to what, machine learning, in regards to
what they think of, like you were recruiting these people that later created what we now right? So when you were recruiting them and you were talking to hiring managers, what were the hiring managers thinking was a signal that actually wasn't?
I don't know. I still think, during my time there when I was recruiting that from engaging with hiring managers, I felt that they didn't know what to expect. They didn't know how big AI was going to be. I think it was something new to them and everyone in regards to how we'll do this. Everything was focused on machine learning and applied science, the scientists.
So they were very driven to like solve the mathematical algorithmic problems.
Yeah, I would say that it were, but it was more focused on how do we make it smarter in regards to, give you an example of what I was pretty much supporting was understanding someone's behavior, understanding how everything it does in the Twitter platform. So all the recommendations. So if I'm following certain individuals, how can I recommend this person to follow this individual? How smart can this be? Can we be that number one platform? I think they wanted to pretty much have Twitter be similar to ChatGPT in the social engagement perspective. But I think people didn't know how big it was going to be. So when ChatGPT came out, I think that's what they wanted to be from that perspective. I don't even think I don't even think OpenAI realized how big they were going to be when it comes to be in that space as well. Because from my understanding, they weren't making money until even when it came out and became large. So I think Twitter, I don't think they even knew how big that was going to be from that perspective, but it was pretty much trying to win that race, and it came to what we have today. Yeah.
So what did you learn from that experience then about, AI talent, which is in high demand now? I mean, I'm sure it was back then, but now it's gotten much more demanding and there's much more of it and everything. So what lessons did you learn from back then about, wins and successes and failures that can inform what you're doing now, what we're all doing now?
Yeah, one thing I can say is I knew it was going to be the next big thing. I just didn't know it was going to take 2 years to 5 years to transition when I was there. Because when I looked at that during my time at Twitter, I looked at it back when I was recruiting back with HP. And when HP, around the time I was working there for about 2013, everything is about mobile development and mobile apps. So that additional span, when I got to Twitter and I was able to see that, I learned that this is going to be where the future is going to be. We didn't. If there was anything else in regards to software engineering, that wasn't the biggest. Everything was more AI and machine learning, and that's why I knew this is what I need to focus on. If I'm going to be in the recruiting, and I stay in the sourcing aspect, I want to make sure I'm in a position where I can still be a part of this area, because that's where all the demand is going to be. If we need more AI and more AI applied scientists and data and applied scientists and machine learning professionals, a company's going to need someone who knows how to recruit these people and how to find these people. So I learned that this is the wheelhouse I need to be in. At one point, I wanted to stay in software engineering and cybersecurity because I felt that that's going to be a house. But when I seen the growth of AI and I seen all this money being invested, even before it became as big as it blew up, that was my primary focus, and that's why I learned from it and during my time there.
And so back then, I mean, things hadn't quite changed. I want to kind of shift to the other big hot topic that we were going to talk about here. And so back then things hadn't quite begun to shift as much with DEI, but since then, DEI has been just gutted from a lot of companies. And you actually predicted in 2024 that Gen Z would bring it back. So, it's like it just sort of got ripped out. I mean, it was like somebody hit the delete button and it spread like wildfire and everybody just sort of put a stop to it. I even saw pages break because they had links to their DEI policy and those pages got taken down. And so people were clicking on pages that weren't even there anymore because it was like such a rush to delete all of this because of the mandate. And so all of that just sort of like the vacuum just, sucked everything out of the room. And then, and now you're predicting that Gen Z is going to bring it back. Are you still feeling that a couple years later?
At the moment, no. And they will bring it back eventually.
Take a little longer.
As of right now, Gen Z, they're even having problems right now finding employment because of the way the landscape is. Because I think Gen Z is very passionate about the environment. They're very passionate about inclusivity. But at the same time, if you're not in charge of the workforce right now and you're having problems even landing employment, I see that happening, but it's going to take much longer than expected for that dynamic to change.
Yeah, that makes sense. In your intro, you were talking about the components of DEI that you still get to work on, which are disabled and people with disabilities and veterans. What still produces outcomes, with tight budgets? I mean, or let's just say basically no budgets, because I'm sure there's not a whole lot of money out there dedicated to DEI, but you still have to deliver on, say, for example, those two areas. So what still works on a kind of micro scale that we can do to make a difference?
I think what still works is partnerships and having a strong net. Because for me, I've always been passionate about engaging with veterans and within that community, because there's a lot of talent, especially with my time at Twitter. I met a lot of people that I was able to connect with. So some of my relationships, especially from a cybersecurity standpoint, been exceptional talent I was able to connect with. But for me, I still like to go to military job fairs. I still like to source and join different groups to connect with that individual talent. That's always worked for me. I will say, even if we're working with a large organization and you have a skill bridge in place, leverage that type of program. But also, a source is always going to source. You're always going to have a community, whether it's on the social media, whether it's LinkedIn, how to tap into that talent. I think, and the reason why that talent is still important, because they have a different dynamic. They have a different dynamic from in-service, but from a in-service perspective, but they also have a mindset once they transition as well. I like to consider them, hybrid employees from a technical perspective, because they have both sides of the spectrums in regards to their service, but also in regards to how they work on the commercial side. And they're very disciplined individuals and take pride in their work. Not saying that people who are not a veteran doesn't do that, but there's a different stigma when you engage with that demographic. So that talent always, stands out to me. I think they have a tight community where they always want to leverage each other, give people who has a veteran's background an opportunity, because a lot of those individuals from veterans, they do have a problem at some time transitioning, going to the civilian world. But in regards to that, that talent has been very key for me, going out and finding ways to continue to stay engaged with them.
So give me an example of like boots on the ground, outreach, when you say connecting with that community, grassroots wise. Give me like a tactical example of how you go about doing that for those that don't have that set up.
Okay. So I'm going to give you two answers to that in regards to program dedicated to those professionals, where they always have resources available for you to engage with. There's also free job fairs. There's organizations that I partnered with in the past called Career Circle, who's dedicated to having virtual job fairs for individuals. There's also Orion Higher Purpose that also has a great network for veterans. Right. But also from a sourcing perspective, engage with LinkedIn groups, engage with engage with LinkedIn groups, engage with Facebook groups, because I've been able to find a lot of individuals leveraging that as well. Once you engage with those groups, the opportunity is pretty much endless from that perspective, being able to find and engage with that talent. Well, that's the way I've been able to find individuals with that talent. And once you go to these job fairs and virtual job fairs, you have a CRM, add them to your CRM. You always have a pipeline that you can engage with once you have those individuals. You go to one
now,
job.
you probably already know where all these jobs are. Is there any place you can like look these up? Like, how would somebody that doesn't even know about it, the first thing about veteran job fairs? Because there's a few companies that do that. How do you find them?
Yeah. I pretty much find them just from my network, but how you can find them, you can Google them, or one of the strongest networks out there is Career Circle. Career Circle is a Legis Group owned company. So if you are someone who understands or have been a part of veteran career fairs, I would say Military Hire, Career Circle has been the most popular in regards to finding that military talent. Even with Disability In also has a lot of talent that comes from veterans background, but also community for people with disabilities. So for me,
what about Recruit Military? Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I've worked with them as well. Yeah, they've been dynamic as well with some of those job fairs.
They have events, right? And have you heard of dvnf.org?
I haven't.
dvnf.org?
No.
It's specifically for disabled veteran. I mean, it's like, it checks both boxes, right? Veterans and people with disabilities, not that they always go together, but unfortunately when they do, this covers both. I think it's a foundation, a nonprofit, and they've got a job board. I don't know if they have events, but they have like resources. Maybe they have some links there. And then I think the VA for Vets has hiring events and career for that. And I think the American Legion does too.
Yeah. One of the things I do want to recommend as well, I haven't worked with them in a while, but Orion Hire Purpose, they have a program where they actually go out to military bases. And they will actually recruit for you. So, for example,
as people are preparing to exit or end their service, right?
Yeah. So, if you are looking for cybersecurity, you're looking for supply chain, you're looking for other organizations, they do partner with individuals in regards to your companies. In regards to, hey, I'm going to this base, they have cybersecurity talent, or I'm going to this base in San Antonio where we'll look for supply chain, or whatever you're looking for from a software engineering perspective. You can build your strategy around that, and they would actually travel to those bases for you on your behalf, based on your partnership, which I think is essentially great. If you are an organization looking to partner with anyone, that's going to be a great strategic way to how to engage with talent, especially from a veteran's perspective.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. That's a very complete answer. Something else I wanted to ask you, going back to Twitter, but not the company, Twitter, at X, basically. I've seen you present a couple times actually now, and I think recently at T8 Week back in February this year, you presented on how to do advanced sourcing with X, and I got to tell you, bro, I stopped. I wrote them off, but you were presenting on that topic. So what are you finding there? I guess, what are you looking for? And can you give me a brief, example of, when somebody says Twitter is dead or X is dead, what are they missing and how do they use it?
I started going back. I started using Twitter going back to using X for two things. And going back, I did two things: Twitter before it became X, and then X from an AI perspective. I started to use X because I wanted to learn how to navigate more from an advanced searching perspective without pulling in Boolean logic. But what people don't know, this option is still there. If you go into the advanced search and start playing around with it by locations, if you're looking for people who's tweeting from and they have certain companies on their page, the advanced search feature will do that for you. So if I'm looking for software engineers that indicated that they have that on their profile, I can have the advanced search feature say, find this individual who has Meta or who has Amazon in their profile, who has Dallas as a location. So I've been doing that and using that because I would try to train individuals on how to use social media from that perspective. Opposed to just going on Google and putting your site command Boolean string in there, I wanted to show, hey, you can actually dive even more deeper or finding previous tweets.
Okay.
So that was one of the aspects. But I've been using it now because I went through my journey using Grok, using Gemini and others, and I wanted to use that to see, because it specialized more in social engagement. Their AI system, where I'm looking at previous messages in real time, real fast. And for example, if I'm looking for, there's a lot of talent that left some organizations in the Dallas location that were software engineers that were impacted by AI. So I say, hey, find me individuals that say they're open to work, they're looking for work. They tweeted this around this time frame. I use AI to do that within their ecosystem, and I was able to find various tweets, various profiles, and it helped me find them from a sourcing perspective, and it helped me do the outreach, because not only did they give me tweets about them being open to work, they talked more about their personality or how they use the platform.
At a deeper perspective.
Yeah. And it helped me with my introduction of why I'm reaching out. I had talking points. I understand that they probably were laid off. I understand some things they're working on. So I can call that out, and I can reach out to them on that platform opposed to reaching out to them on LinkedIn, because they're probably getting 20 to 30 messages an hour based on their background and based on even having AI experience. So that's how I've been using that platform from that perspective. I've been enjoying this thus far. So for me, it's always pipelining. If I can use that to pipeline talent for now in the future, even if they aren't available, usually when someone has open to network, they have some type of contact information on their X profile. So just me gathering information, being able to find ways to connect with them in the future and building up that pipeline.
That's pretty cool. So I'm gonna have to start, experimenting with it again, because I literally I was using it for a while, but when my account got locked out, I just never got back in, and I was still searching a little bit, but then it just eventually just like dropped off. Yeah, you're opening my eyes to a whole new old source. So that's pretty cool. Let's transition to another one of our topics. If a TA leader is watching right now and their team just got, shrunk, cut in half, whatever, new budget, same workload, right? And maybe AI tools as a lifeline or something, what should they do first? They just cut their team, they cut their budget, but they still got to produce, or maybe even produce more than they did before. Give me something that they can do.
Oh man, that's a tough question, because I think that's a question that everyone asks. I think that's something that everyone's going through now.
Yeah.
Because of what's going on. One of the things I will say that AI won't be your lifeline as your savior. Yeah. If you're under budget or on the staff, only thing I can recommend doing is putting your head down and figure out what's going to be priority first. If this particular book of business is going to be first, focus on that book of business. You're going to burn yourself out. Once you burn yourself out, you're probably going to resign and try to go somewhere else. So one of the things I do recommend is prioritizing what's important and why they're losing.
So what's the first meeting that you would run then to do that?
Yeah. I think the first meeting, what I would do is explain what's going on, explain the trajectory, explain the 2 to 5 year plan. Because if I was in that position, I'm worried about my job security. I've already seen some of my counterparts, downsize, and we don't know if there's going to be more downsizing, because again, essentially, you have to have some type of feedback to get to your employees, keep that motivation. If you see some of your team is gutted, your team is still dealing with shock. So you're not going to come in with that same energy that you did before the layoffs happened. So first, you have to be able to provide security. You have to ask yourself, can you provide security to your current team that you do have? How are you going to address them being overworked, because they're going to have to pick up the load from the team that they missed? And then you got to ask the following question. We were cut. What's going to be next? So if other teams are going to be cut, then you're going to have to focus on, okay, now there's going to be more work and more backfields. So the next step is what can you do to keep the energy going? What is going to be the trajectory? Can you guarantee that people that you have right now are going to be safe? But also, can you this may be a time to even cross train your team, because giving them other experiences, outside of sourcing, you have them carry the load as well. But they're going to have to minimize their headcount, because you're already short staffed. What can you do in regards to your hiring trajectory? You have to make sure you prioritize what's going to be important for the company, but also show these individuals why they're still there, and how we can re-energize them to make them feel safe, secure, but also be able to execute. That is a very tough thing to do, on how you can do it, but that's how you have to lay it down. When that happens, we know that no one's in the industry is safe when you're working for an organization. There's no such thing as 100% security. So you have to just validate the people that you do have and the strong people that you still do have. What can you do to make them feel that, hey, we still want to invest in you. We still want you to be here. We don't want you to burn out, but this is the way of the land right now. We are looking to do this for the next couple of years. What's going to happen? And can we work with you? That's the only thing you really can do, because at the end of the day, it's still going to continue to be a shift.
That's I'm glad you said that, and I want to kind of piggyback that with something else that I meant to ask you about. You talked about, when in one of your articles or interviews, that even though it's, sort of bringing everything together, right? The layoffs and DEI and everything, even though there were a lot of DEI specific layoffs, companies that literally eliminated their diversity team, even government organizations and stuff. But as that was happening, you also talked about the fact that there's been more people starting companies. So I want to anchor what you just said to the future, and sort of echo that. In my experience, this is something that I'm seeing. But tell me more about that. So essentially kind of bringing this back to, okay, yeah, maybe Facebook just laid off 8,000 people, but at the same time, there's a lot of startups, and there's like 2-person startups that are making money. And I think I read an article somewhere. It might have been another one of those AI hype articles about, this is the generation that will see the $1 billion 1-person startup, stuff like that. So is that, small and medium business has always been the lifeblood of America. It's one of the things that makes this country so resilient, is that, there are all these big companies, but the sum total of small business income is far bigger than all of corporate, enterprise combined. So is that what's going to happen? We're going to see the shrinking of these big corps and the broadening of our base of like solopreneurs and small businesses? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I do see shrinkage. The reason I say shrink is from a corporate perspective.
The enterprise, right?
They are trying to still scale back. They're still trying to invest. I think they're throwing, in regards to AI, some companies are throwing, it's like throwing spaghetti on the wall, seeing what sticks. The reason why they're investing billions, and a lot of these companies are still trying to recover from COVID, believe it or not. Some people still don't think that's a factor, but I think a lot of people did a lot of hiring. They're still recovering from losing, from that perspective. So when you cut people, and people are, this is probably the worst time I've seen thus far, and also Q4 of last year with all these layoffs. So if you can't find companies and you can't find contract positions, you're going to have to start up. And the reason I think that's going to continue to be successful, because I think the people who are starting are very seasoned talent, who has a huge network, but who has the skill sets, who's not relying on AI. So as you continue to see individuals starting their own startup,
Their own little
relationships that they already have, that's going to continue to be huge for everyone. Because what I'm seeing now, and I don't know how long this is going to last, when these companies do shrink, they do rehire, they go back and get less experienced talent. Because the reason
that's happening too. I mean, we saw Salesforce cut, a bunch of people for AI because they thought they were going to have the Salesforce AI do customer service, and then they hired them back, or hired other people back, or whatever. But my friend Andrew was the guest last week, and after the show, he shared a perspective with me that really opened my eyes to something that I honestly had never considered before until he brought it up. Andrew is one of the least hype affected people that I know. Like he does not suffer hype at all. Very critical thinker. And he said this, and I just kind of want to float this past you to get your reaction on it as well. I hadn't considered that the mass hiring caused by the pandemic. So the pandemic, there was hiring freezes during the peak of the pandemic because companies didn't want to spend any money. They didn't want to grow. They weren't sure what was going on. But then when the pandemic started to subside, all of a sudden the floodgates opened. Every rec that was on hold for a year got posted. Companies hired a ton. It was like this post-pandemic hiring, which Andrew made the point that resulted in too many hires because all of a sudden they just opened. They had all this money in reserve. They had all this pent up, projects that weren't getting done. And so they hired all these people, which created a lot of overemployment. And he said that part of what we're experiencing now is, like you said, they're still recovering from the pandemic, but they needed to hire people in order to generate the products that generate the revenue. Now they're finally starting to recover and they're laying off because they overhired.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I definitely agree. I definitely agree 100%. Not only did they overhire, they revamped their strategy for remote work. And everyone wanted to race for talent because they feel that, hey, if we are not going to the office, why not just hire remote workers who can do the same work or have that skill set? And a lot of the companies hire people who they probably would never hire before the pandemic, not from a skills perspective, but from a location perspective. Even before I started working at Twitter, I did, working in big tech was always a goal for mine to work for a big tech company. And one of the things that I realized is if I'm not in the Bay Area or if I'm not in Austin, Texas, where the hub is, or even Atlanta, I may not be able to have the opportunity to work for those organizations. So when I had the opportunity to work for Twitter and still work out of Detroit, I said, why not? This is always an organization I wanted to work.
Right, it was on your bucket list.
Yep, and it was something where I could say, hey, I'm doing new and innovative technology from a large social media and tech engine. Why not? But at the same time, when you start seeing all these layoffs from the pandemic, and even now, I would say more than 50% are impacted by remote work. You're overhired because it's easier to hire when you can hire someone remotely, opposed to it
was easier. They needed them. It was pent up demand. Yeah. There was easy money. All these, and so we're actually kind of it's unfortunate, but we're suffering from that recovery still.
Yep.
And so it's a positive. I mean, it's bad that we're having these layoffs, but it's a positive thing because it's an adjustment economically. And I think what I'm saying is I'm seeing a lot of people start their own businesses or joining smaller companies that would not have, people that are joining. I've seen some. I don't know if I'm framing this the right way. I hope I don't offend anybody or whatever. If I do, it's not what I mean to do. But I've seen some people take jobs that I was like, oh, wow. I would have never expected that person to take a job with like a small mom and pop pizza shop. Not, but like interesting. And so they're taking it because the opportunity is there. Yeah. Because those are, I think, SMBs where the growth is going to be. I mean, it's always been the lifeblood, but I think now one of the positive effects of AI is it's giving entrepreneurs and small business owners the ability to do things they couldn't do before. And it's not replacing jobs. It's actually creating monetary value because they're able to simple things like they can use AI to place Facebook ads, and they never placed Facebook ads before because they just couldn't manage it. But now AI for $50 a month can do it. So they don't have to hire a social media company for a small project like that. Yeah, Seems like you're aligned with that.
Yeah, definitely. I know a few individuals. Good person I know at Twitter at the time. His name was Larry. You probably know Larry Hernandez. One of the things I noticed when he was impacted, he started his own consulting where he's teaching companies how to do AI and do other things. And I started to see a trend in that. He was the first person I noticed when they were doing that, doing their own business and starting kicking things off. That's going to continue to happen. And I think, with people who are not in the sourcing area but are leading TA or leading other areas, they're going to rely on people who have their startups that transition from big companies and starting their own, they're going to weed on that talent more because it's more efficient. It's more
Yeah. Okay.
people are passionate about their own business where they want to make sure, hey, I'm the person you should need to connect with from a business perspective, but also they are the people that's sitting down doing the work on a day-to-day basis and training these enterprise organizations how to execute from a startup perspective. And then again, a lot of people are starting even today, they are not programmers, but they are partnering and starting their own AI companies, which is amazing. I'm pretty jealous about that because which else I can do right now, but that's pretty amazing what we're seeing.
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of translate that to say, okay, like back in the day, 100 businesses might create 500 jobs, but now 100 businesses might create 120 jobs. So it's not like it's not it's not like these small businesses are creating a huge wing in employment that's going to cover the shrinking employment from the enterprise side, because these small businesses will probably remain 1 or 2 employee companies because of AI, but there's just a lot more of them. So instead of having 100 new businesses, we might have 200 new businesses. So I guess I'm saying positive in that, it's going to generate more windfall financially for us, especially for people that are taking risks and are creative. And, so we lose a little bit on the stability side, but we win a little bit on, the opportunity side. And quite frankly, I'm kind of done with the stability because so many companies made promises and then broke them. It's just getting to be almost like a standard now.
Yeah.
It didn't used to be that way. I remember when companies would make a statement, we will never lay anybody off. And then, and now even those companies are like, yeah, we're laying everybody off.
That didn't last long at all. Knowing those promises are definitely.
So the loyalty is kind of declining too, at least corporate loyalty, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Still friendships and connections, and like you were talking about before, that's becoming more important. So
definitely.
That's cool. Good perspective. Yeah, thank you for sharing that with me. So we're getting pretty close to the end of the show here, and I wanted to ask, if somebody was gonna like follow in your footsteps and try to copy your approach, and they only had 2 weeks to ramp up, what are the 3 steps that they need to start thinking about taking? Have a plan. Like they just got somewhere, they want to essentially they're looking up at you as a inspiration, and they want to do what you did. What's the 3-step plan to just get them going in the right direction?
I don't know if it's a 3-step or 1 or 2 steps. What I will
say,
that's
fine. 1 or 2 is fine. Yeah.
I will say the first thing to do is to have a plan. Plan also remember,
and that's it. See ya.
And the plan may not execute the way you want to execute, but you have to have a starting goal and also the ending goal. One of my goals when I got
the goal and the plan basically.
Yeah, it is to pretty much, hey, if you want to be in a certain industry, or if you want to be in a certain industry, you have to put yourself in a position to put yourself in a certain industry. My goal was always to stay pretty much at one point was to stay in big tech and become a leader, or any organization become a leader. But I always wanted to work on the corporate side. You have to get yourself in a situation where I would tell anybody this: my blueprint would help me in regards to where I am. I will always recommend someone to start off in the staffing industry or work for a startup recruiting firm. That was my blueprint. I said, I did an internship before in HR and sourcing, and then I did a full-time job starting off as a headhunter sourcer. Totally different night and day. If you are passionate about getting into working on the latest technologies and working with different organizations and being a partner, I would say start off in staffing first before you do anything, because that's where you get your grit from. That's the first thing. Then the step 2, let's find a mentor. So I guess use an example. If someone was looking at me as a blueprint, leverage myself or leverage someone else as a blueprint in regards to mentorship. There's going to be so many questions. It's always easy when you have someone that you can see it from a trajectory perspective, opposed to just being a self-learner and not reaching out and engage with someone. But that will be step 2. And step 3 is just to execute. Continue to challenge yourself. Continue to learn new things. Continue to network. I would think those are the 3 things. One thing I think that saved me I had to take my pride to the side because I was so adamant about being the best in regards to my area, in regards to what I was passionate about. It stopped me from getting mentors. That once I started getting mentors, that changed for me. So that's one of the things. Always, how good, how
There's your
prideful you
third step.
are in your
There's
space.
your
Yep,
third one.
yep. So that would be the biggest thing. Finding someone in your space that you can relate to or see something yourself. Funny story. I don't know how much time we have. Maybe I'll save it at the end. But
We got 5 more minutes.
yeah, quick thing for me. When I started off in the sourcing arena and I was working with these senior recruiters, I was doing full desk, but I wanted to know there are certain things that these recruiters are not doing that I'm doing. So why don't I focus on this? I didn't have a mentor at the time, and everyone in the staffing industry is more of competitors. But one of the things that really solidified me and cigar, okay, I want to take this approach, was watching Jim Stroud. I used to watch Jim Stroud's videos early back when I started working for a staffing company. But what intrigued me about all the stuff he was doing about Google Plus and all these things at the time, his energy really stood out. So when I started doing that, I tried to leverage him as a mentor, even though we weren't communicating at the time. It was just me studying him and studying his blueprint. I don't know if he was at Randstad or somewhere else at the time, but someone introduced his videos to me, and I feel like, hey, this is a path I want to see myself leading in this certain area. So that really helped me out. And I say that even if you're studying someone, study someone that you feel that they have something that you want to get to at one point. Then as I grew, I started meeting other individuals, meeting Brian Fink, meeting you. So a lot of that helped me throughout my years. So that's definitely one thing that I definitely will recommend doing.
Shameless plug for TSIUniversity.com. Got to plug myself here, but yeah, folks can get access to the recording through TSI University and my notes and extra handouts by joining TSIUniversity.com. We don't have any advertising on this platform at all. It's free to everybody. Streams on LinkedIn, streams on YouTube. So this is the only way I can support myself. And I don't want to take any advertisers because I don't want to have people telling me what to say. I want to be able to explore and stuff. But yeah, that's a really good advice. I think that's a strong third step is find a mentor, find a coach, find somebody. I mean, I have a coach. Everybody that's a top performer can use a coach. You can't ever be so good at anything that you couldn't use a coach. Even the greatest tennis player of all time, Roger Federer, had like 7 coaches. An exercise coach, a swing coach, a nutrition coach. Yeah, you can always use that. So I think that's a really good third point. Well, buddy, is there anything I'd love to close out the show the way that I used to before we sort of switch formats a little bit, and that is there something that you want us to think about deeply over the weekend for ours, like a question we should ask ourselves?
Yeah, I would say a question you should ask yourself is, that's a good question, on the spot question, but it's a good question. One of the things I would just say is talk about the big question, layoffs. It's always be prepared, not being prepared for layoffs, but it's being prepared for change. Layoffs always recircles back. So one of the things I want to say is once you go to layoffs, companies are going to try to recoup and get more talent as well. So if don't stress yourself out about if you're going to be on that list or what's going to happen, what the future holds. Just worry about focus on it and being prepared for any outcome, but also don't worry about AI replacing you as well.
I get that. Yeah, that's not a question. That's a fact. Don't worry about AI taking your job. But the question is, how are you preparing yourself for any potential layoff, or how are you preparing your team for any potential layoff, yours or theirs? But start thinking about how you can protect yourself or have a backup plan that you can easily put in place. Doesn't mean that you should be paranoid about it, but I think it's a really good idea, and it's a really good question to ask yourself. How am I prepared if it happens?
And always make sure you're keeping a strong network every day. That's what when layoffs happen.
Don't forget your network, even when you're working and you've got a job and you're safe, because that's when your network really benefits you. Because when you get laid off, nobody's going to want to talk to you if you're the one that's like, I just lost my job, please help me. But if you were there for the year or two before that, and you were checking in with people, how's it going? Can I help you? That's how you do it. You don't wait until you need them. I don't like those calls where they only call me when they need me. And I'm not that, I check in with folks regularly. How's it going? How you doing? What's new? I do that as a matter of fact, because I don't like being the recipient of the, hey, I haven't talked to you in 3 years, but I need help moving a couch. Yeah. I need help finding a job. Like, well, I needed help finding a job a year ago. Where were you then?
Yeah, definitely. So, that tends to happen. I try to be the person that can respond, but sometimes like, hey, I haven't talked to you in 3 or 4 years. I'm doing well, but
check in, just drop it out, send a text, a LinkedIn DM, something. Well, thanks a lot for being here, man. Really appreciate it. I know you're busy, and it's been a trip to try to get this scheduled. So I'm so happy it happened, and man, I hope we can have you back sometime.
Absolutely, it's always a pleasure, Sal. Definitely appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah. Bye, everybody. Be kind to yourselves until next week when we get back. And our topic of discussion is with Steve Ward. Look him up, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.